Okay, so first thing about Excel is it's a little bit like battleships when we try and navigate around a spreadsheet, in that all the columns have letters from A all the way down to double letters, triple letters, miles down on the right there, and numbers down on the rows. And when I talk about cells, I'll give you what's called their cell reference. So this cell here is B3 because it's in column B, row 3. So when I'm talking about which cells you need to type stuff in, that's the references I'm going to be using. So the first thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to type income and expenditure in cell A1 here, which is right at the top. So you can just click on that cell and you should just be able to type. I'm going to use the ampersands. You don't have to. Okay, income and expenditure. And then in B2, so which is this one here, I want you to type Jan, so short for January, obviously. So usually the cursor is, if you can look on my screen, this sort of black, white cross, looks a bit like the Swiss flag, if you know your flags, right? So that's the usual sort of default cursor look in Excel. But when Excel wants to do different things or is able to do some different stuff, the cursor might change to look a bit differently. So if you hover over the bottom right hand corner of B2 here, once you've typed in Jan, you'll see that your cross will turn to a black cross there, so different to the Swiss flag looking one. And what that's saying is that there's a function of a different function available, and what that can do for you is that can do something called autofill. So if you hold down your left mouse button on that black cross and drag it all the way up to H2, you'll suddenly see actually that Excel is intuitively thinking, well, I recognize January, it sounds like a month, and is this what you want? And if you let go, you'll see that your cells across the top there are auto-populated, Jan, Feb, March, in the same format. If we typed January as a whole, we would have got January all the way across. That's called autofill. Really handy if you're filling a sequence across a number of cells for you to use in that one there. Just at this point, just want to highlight the undo button. So especially for you, Sue, by the sounds of it from our chat at the beginning, you can't break anything in Excel. Everything is possible. Most things are possible to undo. There's a bit about deleting sheets that you can't necessarily undo. But so if you've done something wrong today, just in general, the undo button is there. It is your friend. Next to it is the redo button. So if you've undone something that you didn't mean to undo, you can redo. Again, similar across most Microsoft packages as well. So the good thing about Excel, and what I'd encourage you to do is play with it a little bit, because you can't really break it. So just have confidence in that. Okay, also there's a shortcut, there's Control and Z if you like your shortcuts, which also is undo as well. Right, let's get back to our spreadsheet. So in cell A3 here, I'd like you to type income. It will try and auto-populate for you. It will try and pick up and expenditure. But if you hit the backspace or delete button, it will stop trying to auto-populate for you and it won't force it. Because what it does is it picks up that you've written something similar before above, and it will try and helpfully say, do you want to replicate that? And you say no by hitting backspace there. Has everyone got that? Yeah. Okay, great. So in A4, let's type salary here. In B4, let's type 1,500. So that's our salary. Put that in there. And let's autofill that to April. So if you remember, we can hover at the bottom right-hand corner of cell B4, drag it across, click holding down our left mouse button, and we'll let go at April. And again, Excel's gone, well, I don't recognize 1,500 as a sequence, particularly like I recognize January. I'll just copy that in this instance. This is a smart tag here that pops up after you've done that, and actually that will give you some options, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we're happy with that because we want 1,500 across there. But let's say in May, our salary increased to 2,000. So let's put 2000 there in cell F4, and let's autofill that all the way across to July. So same process, bottom right hand corner of the cell, drag across to July. And again, Excel says I don't recognize that as a pattern or a sequence, so I'll just replicate 2000, and that's fine because that's what we want. Okay, so a bit alien to us in local government, but underneath salary in A5, let's type bonus. Chance to be a fine thing, right? In there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all the cells from B5 to H5. So this is a slightly different way of autofilling something or putting a number in multiple cells at once. So make sure they're highlighted like that. Then type in 200 like that. And then control and enter. Oh, sorry. So highlight all your cells, type in 200, press control and enter, and that will put in that number across the board. Really helpful if you're putting in the same number across multiple bits of data. And you can do that, you can do that anywhere on a spreadsheet for anything that you want. So if you highlight any bit of a spreadsheet and type in a name, a word, a number, and control enter it, you will get that replicated across those cells that you've highlighted. Really handy. If you want to highlight particular cells, you can do that using the control button. So here I've just highlighted cell E9, and I'm just going to hold down control, select a random load of cells on my spreadsheet here, type in 1000, and if I hit control enter, in all of those cells that I've selected, it will give you those numbers. So have a little play with it. And see if you can do those things. Just have a little go on your spreadsheet and then undo them afterwards because we don't need any of those. All right. Okay, so let's move on.
Have you got like a sheet that has got these things written down, these tips?
Yes, I'm going to send it to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
shortcuts and things like that. Yeah, I've got. And I'll also point you in the direction. There's a bit on Teams as well. That's Excel help. At any time, by the way, if you're not sure about something, if you want to ask any questions, please do that. Very happy to hear from you. Okay, all right then. So underneath bonus, then let's type in moonlighting here in cell A6. And let's put some different numbers in here. So let's go 300 in B6, 150 in C6, 750 in D6, 425 in E6, 229 in May, 330 perhaps in June, and 365 perhaps in July. So that's cell H6 there. Right. Now, so we've got our income then. So in cell A7, let's now have our expenditure. So let's type expenditure in cell A7 just there. And under expenditure, I think we'll have mortgage, gas, very on trend, isn't it? This insurance, electricity. What a way to depress us on a Thursday morning. Electricity. Food, good old council tax at the bottom there. So that's in A13. So we're just putting together a little income and expenditure spreadsheet for us. Right, so with our mortgage, let's say our mortgage, that's 800. Now I would like you to populate that. Let's say we're on a fixed mortgage and we're paying the same from January to July. I'd like you to populate 800 all the way across, and you can do that using your autofill function, where you drag it like that, or you can do it using the highlighting and hitting control and enter. So gas will be, let's say 79. I'm going to actually highlight first, then type 79 and and hit Control and Enter to highlight those. Insurance, that's something a bit weird, £72.35. Again, I quite like autofill. Ooh. So I'll just drag that across. Electricity, let's say £67.10. Autofill that across. Food, let's say 250. Let's say that's all the way across. I'm going to use the highlight 250, Control and Enter. Council tax, let's say £43.56. And again, I'm just going to autofill all the way across to July. So I'll just give you a sec to populate those numbers in any way that you want.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
Are you going to cover about? I know 6710 is accurate in the way it's formatted, but if I wanted it to display as a 10.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can do that now, but yes, I think I might touch on that later, but let's do it now, definitely. So what you'll see, so you've got the menu bar here at the top, which is your file, home, insert, blah, blah, blah. And the one underneath, which from version to version just gets more and more crowded, but actually more and more useful if you understand it, is what's called the ribbon, which is this, which is all these different things here. And that's probably the most useful stuff, shortcut stuff that you'll need. So if you're dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet, and we will move on to this in a minute, but you can change it. It will always default to general on a new spreadsheet. But if you wanted it actually to specifically say that Excel, this is a number and I want you to treat it like a number, you can change that to number, and we'll do this a little bit later. And then this is a really handy shortcut key, which is fairly new, which is decimal points. And I always get it the wrong way around. So you can either increase or decrease your decimal point. So if you had something, if you wanted to round something up, you could do it that way. But if you really wanted something that was, to a particular decimal or just to 2 decimal points, you could do it by using that as well. And again, you can do that by highlighting lots of bits of data and doing that in the same way, and it will do the same. Is that okay?
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
No worries. I'm going to just change that back by undoing a lot of times, because we will do a bit of that in a bit. But yeah, if you do have any questions as they come up, definitely ask them. And even if we're going to cover them later, I'll let you know. Okay, so do you know how to save a document in Excel? You comfortable with that? So on the menu bar, we go up to File, and it's over here on the left. Do you know the difference between save and save as? Yeah, so for you, Sue, this might be helpful. So if you've got a spreadsheet that you're putting stuff in, that it's a central spreadsheet that you don't want to mess up, actually, you can go into that spreadsheet, and if you use the save as, you can save a different version and maybe have a bit of a play with it, in the knowledge that you're not going to mess up the master spreadsheet. So you can go and try stuff, Sue, in that monthly upload spreadsheet if you wanted to, by saving a version, pressing save as. But let's just save this any way you like. I've got a, probably like most of you, have my own little drive here. And let's call this income and expenditure. Let's just make sure that we've saved it there. Any way you want in your personal drives. So we're just going to make sure that we've saved it. Alrighty. Shortcut key for that as well. If you across all Microsoft products, Control S is a really quick way just to save. And as soon as you saved a version of it, so it knows where to save it, if you just Control S as you go through, it will update whatever you're doing. And I'm sure we've all lost data, documents, spreadsheets in the past, so I definitely encourage you to Control S as you go. All right, okay, so column A then here, we can't really see everything that we've written in here because we've got data in the field following it. So if we want to try and make that bigger, there's a few ways that we can do that. So if you hover again, you get your usual Swiss cross of Excel, but if you hover between two columns, you'll see that actually the arrow changes into a cross with two arrows, either at the sort of east and west point of it. And you can use that arrow to hold down your left mouse button and increase column and indeed row, same down here, row sizes as well. So you might want to just increase your column size so that you can see what's what there. There's also a quick way in which you can see what you're doing. So if you had your columns back there, if you just double clicked in between the columns, that's called auto fit, and that will automatically fit the longest item in that column. And income and expenditure is our longest item in that column, so it will automatically do that for us there. And you can do that across a whole spreadsheet. And again, if you hover over the letter A in the column, you'll see that your cursor has changed to a downward arrow. So if you can click your left mouse button, drag along to our column H, and then you can auto fit a whole load of data. So you can just hover over in between any one of the selected columns that you have. If you double click in between, you'll see that actually automatically that fits your columns nicely around all of your data, depending on what the longest bit of data is in those columns. So that's a really quick way to tidy up a spreadsheet for to make it fit what you've got there. All right, okay, so let's assume that we've
Sorry,
actually...
Matt,
Go on. Yeah, go on.
how did you do that last bit to make them all do it at the same time?
Yep, so it's the important part is you need the drop. If you hover over A, like I am on my screen here, you'll see that it changes to an arrow. You need to make sure it's on the arrow. Left click your mouse button, hold down, drag across to H, and then in any of the ones that are highlighted, in between any of the columns that are highlighted, if you double click, when you get the cursor with the arrows at the sort of east and west points of it, it should automatically snugly fit around your data. You can also just change all of those to a uniform size if that isn't what you wanted, by doing exactly the same. So I've still got my data highlighted, and if I click and hold my left mouse button this time and decide to go to, I don't know, the width of 1075 pixels, it will do that in a uniform way across my data as well. So you don't have to mess around with every single column, every single row. You can double click to say, Excel, I want you to intuitively wrap this table and make it nice and snug, or you can make it a particular uniform size across by those two different ways. Did that work?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, great. Okay, so if we want to insert a row, do people know how to insert a row on the spreadsheet? Yes, mainly yes. All right, we'll rattle through this then. Let's say that we've forgotten to add petrol expenditure, so let's include that between gas and insurance. If you click on the row 10, right click, and you can insert there. It will insert a blank column, sorry, a blank row above the row that you've selected. So let's put petrol in what is now cell A10, and it shifts everything down a number. So let's add that in. Let's put 100 all the way across. I'm going to highlight, type 100 and press Control Enter, auto populate it like that. Let's say that we've missed water as well. So let's put that in between, I don't know, electricity and insurance. So I'm going to highlight row 11, right click, insert, type in my new A12 water. Let's give that, I don't know, 31.55 all the way across. And this time I think I'll autofill to the end. There we go.
Can you do that again, please?
Yeah, sure. So for water, so to insert a row, you just need to select the row. So I'm going to select row 12 here. You see my cursor's changed to a black pointy to the right arrow. I think that's the technical term for it. And then right click and then insert on that drop down menu. And that will insert a new blank row above the row that you've selected.
Right.
Has that worked?
Yep.
Great. And for that one, we had water and we had 31.55 all the way across over to July. Don't forget to Control S as you go along, saving your data. So let's say that we wanted to edit a cell here. So we've wanted to actually add, we meant food and drink because my drink bill's pretty hefty. So I want to include that, reflect that in my income and expenditure. If you start just typing and drink, you'll see that it's actually typed over food, which is an issue. Do you know how you can type and edit a cell? Okay, so if you want to edit a cell rather than type over the data, because that can be quite frustrating, you need to use this, which is called the formula bar here. And every time you select a cell, you'll see actually that up here, it's also reflected what you've selected to. So if you click on food, this is where you can edit your cells rather than overtype anything. So you can just click in here and we can simply add and drink to that and then click out and you'll see that that's added in my column, which I'm going to make a bit bigger so you can see it. So yeah, good way to edit the cells. And let's do the same. Let's say with gas, let's say we wanted to say that we're with British Gas. Just like you can type stuff after it, you can also put stuff in before it. So let's put British at the beginning of gas there. We can see that our cell's updated to reflect that. So let's talk a bit more about the numbers then. So they don't mean much at the minute, as Jamie sort of alluded to earlier. So let's actually change them into a monetary format. So what we can do is we can highlight the bit of our data that we want to select. We can go back up to our ribbon here, and this is the number category. We can let's change it, and you'll see if you hit on the drop-down menu that currently says General, you'll see there's lots of different things that you can change it to. I don't tend to use many of these, but if you're somebody in finance, for example, accounting might be quite useful. So if you press accounting, you'll see that actually the numbers have changed. Not just the numbers, but also in a uniform way with the pound sign at the far left of the cell and all the numbers lined up, which actually in a big financial spreadsheet is, I'm told, if you're in finance, is actually quite helpful. So you might want it in an accounting format. So let's change it to that accounting format for now. So you just highlight all your data, and then hit that drop down and change it to accounting. So there's immediately an issue there, and it's probably an issue that you've all encountered before. Has everybody done that? Yep, it's these hashes that we've suddenly got on a spreadsheet. Disaster. Do you know what those hashes mean often? Yeah. What do they mean?
You can't see the numbers because your column's too narrow.
Exactly. And how are we going to fix that, Joe?
We're going to make them bigger.
Yeah. How are you going to
Columns.
make it bigger? What are you going to do?
I'm going to, I think, highlight the lot.
Yep.
And then, wait for that arrow, the down arrow, highlight the lot, and then double click on one of the gaps between the lines between, say, F and G.
Sounds good. Let's try it. Oh, amazing. Expert. Are you sure you don't want to take the course? Yes, exactly. So that's right. So it's just those hashes, I suppose. Yeah, you call them, don't you? Hashtags. Usually mean that the data in the cell is too big for the cell itself, and it's simply often a case of just making that cell a bit bigger. So don't panic.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need to work on spreadsheets where it's either got like phone numbers or reference numbers which start with like leading zeros. And obviously it always gets rid of, by default, it gets rid of that leading zero.
Yes. Yeah, you can do that by having a play around with the format, and you might be able to change the format to, I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but it might be either text might work or general, possibly, rather than accounting, because if it's in, have a look at that spreadsheet, if it thinks it's a number, as you say, a phone number, it will get rid of the zero, because why would you need a zero before a number? So it is almost certainly to do with that. particular function that would be the issue. But
Okay, cool.
if anyone has any issues that they have, I'm really happy just to talk to you about it. I know quite a bit about Excel. If you want to just put in a 20-minute, half-hour call with me at some point, I think my diary is open to everybody. I'm really happy to talk to you about specific issues.
Mine looks slightly different to yours because I haven't got any pound signs. Did I
Okay.
miss something that you put pound signs in?
No, so
Or
I
did they
wonder.
just populate?
So I think you may have just selected the number format here.
Right. Okay.
On the drop-down list, we've actually gone for accounting. So your number
Right.
format will just give you the number.
Right. Okay.
Your accounting format will say this is financial. Now I'm going to put a pound sign in. So try and highlight your numbers again.
Whole of the
and from that-
table.
Yep, and from just the numbers in it. And from your drop-down list, select accounting rather
Okay.
than. Thanks, Joe. It works with text. That way you keep the 0. Thanks. Trying that out. Good stuff. Right. Okay. So we've done a little bit about decimal places, but I suppose we could do again. And actually, yeah, let's do that again. So with our decimal places that we took out earlier, it's just a simple case of increasing or decreasing our decimal. So let's decrease the decimal a bit. And what I want you to pay particular attention to are the numbers of insurance, water, and electricity. So let's decrease by 2 and see what happens to them. So what's happened on your spreadsheet to those numbers?
Yeah, it rounds them up.
Yep, rounds them up or down, depending on whether it's over 0.5. And you might just want that because you make your data look tidier. But what is important is that the values underneath those numbers are still the same. And if you want to prove that, you click on any one of the cells, and in your formula bar, it will still give you the true number there, so 3155. But if you're working with lots of data and you just want to round things up a little bit and make it look a bit more user-friendly, tidier, a bit neater, you can decrease those decimals. It will round them up for you. But the true values, if you want to start putting formulas in or using those numbers, because obviously they're important, will stay the same underneath, even though they are, to us, from our view, are rounded up. So yeah, that's good.
Can you do that again, Matt, please? That to round up.
So I'm just gonna undo twice. So I've selected all my data, and up on the ribbon up here under our number section here, just with the blue arrows and all the zeros, that's your increase or decrease decimal. I always get it the wrong way around, and I always end up increasing before a decrease. But if you decrease it twice, you will see that those values either round up or round down, depending on which they're closer to, which value they're closer to. So just helpful if you're navigating around a spreadsheet. Okay, so we might not want to have it in accounting format because we're not accountants, and that's not that useful. So what we can do is we can go up to our ribbon again, and if we click on that comma format, that will actually get rid of our pound signs, and it will just give us a bit more of a usual view of what numbers look like, which might be a bit, because I find it quite crowded with the pound coins, the pound signs. I don't think you necessarily need those. So that's what that comma does. It just changes the values into something that you might more usually see if you know everything's a number.
And does that rounding up then default to what it was when you press that comma?
Yep. So if
it takes out your rounding up.
Yep, it will take out your rounding up in that instance, but then you can always put it back in this format. Yeah, the other thing that if you're more used to an older version of Excel, by the way, and you've done, as I know that you have, Sue, training before, if you're more used to the old-fashioned, what they used to call dialog boxes, in the ribbon here, you'll see that there's this little arrow with a square in the bottom right of most of them. If you click on that, you might remember these boxes that Excel used to solely have when it came to things like numbers, alignment, font. So you can still actually access those, by using that, if that's something that you're more used to rather than the new stuff. Yeah, just wanted to show you that in case you're more used to that one. All right, so don't forget to save it as you go along. And I just want to show you, let's click on, let's create a new sheet within this workbook. So let's leave our income and expenditure there for now. And at the bottom, you'll see that we've got this is sheet 1. Well, while we're here, we may as well label it. So if you double click on sheet 1 down there, you can see that it should highlight it, and you can actually change the name of it. So let's call it income and expenditure. And if you click off that, you'll see that that's changed. And next to that, you'll see there's a plus in a circle. Let's click on that plus and create a new sheet in our workbook. If you're dealing in a particular area and you have loads of different spreadsheets for the same kind of topic, I would very much recommend that you create a workbook with multiple worksheets for the same topic in your areas, rather than have excuse me, lots of different spreadsheets saved individually elsewhere, because that can make things really, really difficult if you're trying to deal with similar data but have lots of different spreadsheets that are open. If you can keep it all in one workbook, actually that keeps it in nice one sort of central repository and makes it a lot easier to work on. Right, I just want to show you a bit more about autofill, because I think autofill is a really useful function. So as I said, autofill is intuitive, so it will recognize things, and you can have a go with this as well, like Monday, and it will automatically think, right, you want days of the week, and maybe I do, maybe I don't. So let's autofill down to, I've autofilled down to B23, just any arbitrary number that's still on your screen. I'll zoom in a bit as well, sorry. I'll just do that again. So after you have auto-filled, whatever that is you're auto-filling, you will see that Excel now has these things called smart tags. So, and what that does, if you open that, click on the drop-down menu, what Excel is saying is that I think this is a series of days of the week from that you've written Monday. Is that actually what you want? And you can actually select what you want Excel to do here. So actually, if I actually said, no, Excel, I don't want you to include weekends, I could click fill weekdays, and actually that would just take out my weekends, which could be really handy for rotas or anything that logistically that you might be organizing. You can actually say, no, I just want you to copy Monday all the way down because I'm just dealing with Mondays. You can choose different options here, and depending on what you type, it might come up with different things. Oh, flash fill something different. So it will try and be as intuitive as it can, but it will also give you some options to say, is this what you wanted, or do you want something different? Okay. It also does it with other patterns. So do you remember we were typing in numbers, weren't we? And I can't remember what the numbers were. It was 200, wasn't it? And we auto-filled across, and it said, well, I don't recognize that as a pattern. I'm just going to copy. Again, it will give you more limited options in your smart tag this time because it doesn't really recognize 200. But if you start to give Excel some clues, so if you actually said, well, Excel, this is the start of my pattern. It's 5, it's 10, it's 15. Then Excel actually cottons onto that and thinks, all right, this looks a bit like the 5 times table. So if you highlighted the 3 of those bits of data, just to give it more data reference points, and then auto-filled, you'll actually see that Excel picks it up and understands what it is, or has a guess at what it is that you want to do. And again, if it's not that you want, if you want 5, 10, 15 copied across, it will do that, or it will try and guess at the series that you're looking for. Where I find this is probably most helpful is with dates. So what's today's date? 28th, 9th, 22 in our date here. And if we move that across, you'll see that Excel goes, okay, well, perhaps you want every single day for the next 2 weeks or whatever. Oh, doesn't fit, so we'll auto fit our columns. And it might be that's what we want, but what if we don't want that? What else have you got for us, Excel, in your smart tag? So let's have a look. Is it just weekdays? Do you want months? So do we want the same day every month? So this has got the 28th of October, November, December, because I've changed it. Do you want the year? Do you want the same day every year, actually? So you'll see in your smart tag, it will give you, is it just weekdays that you want, which you might very well want, obviously being in a work environment, if you're dealing with spreadsheets. So these smart tags and autofill used together can be quite powerful and quite helpful and save you a lot of time around things like timesheets, spreadsheets along those lines. And if there was something quite irregular, so let's say we wanted 29th of the 9th, 22, and what day is it today? Thursday. So we wanted every Thursday and Tuesday. What's the date on Tuesday? Quickly get the phone. It's October. Should have started from the 1st of the month, Matt. 4th to 10th. 22, thank you, Sue. 4th, 5th, and then the 6th is the next Thursday. I can do that bit of maths. So I've gone Tuesday, Thursday, and hasn't immediately picked that up. It's just copied the cells, actually. Oh, okay, it didn't do that. It didn't do Tuesday, Thursdays. I found a limitation of Excel. But mainly, if you give it a clue for the pattern that you want it to fill, it will more often than not pick up that pattern and understand what you're trying to do, especially if you give it more data points to try and make it understand what you're trying to do. All right, okay. Right, I think so. I think we'll leave that there. What time is it? 20 past 10. I think I'll show you on the next sheet a really useful function around tables. So I'm just going to send you some spreadsheets, and we're not going to use all of these today. So I've just sent you something called Excel materials, and when you get those through, so you can save this spreadsheet. We're done with this one for now. If you could just open AutoSum practice, we'll just do that before we have a quick break. So hopefully they're winging their way to you. It's called number 1 AutoSum practice. You got it? Can you see that on my screen? Is that opened on my screen, or are you still seeing the other one?
Still seeing the other one at the moment.
Okay, I think it's because I've not shared that specifically. Okay. Right, so hopefully your spreadsheet should look just like this. Has everyone got that opened?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, so I just want to show you AutoSum, because people start talking about formulas and get a bit jittery in Excel, but actually, as the versions have improved and been updated, they're actually getting a lot more user-friendly, especially in terms of adding stuff up, and nothing more user-friendly and easy now than adding up simple rows or columns, and you can do that using the AutoSum function. So along your menu at the top here, you've got File, Home, Insert, Page Layout. If you click on Formulas, you'll see on the far left, I think that's the Greek symbol. Is it Sigma? Is that Sigma? I can never remember. It's the back to front 3 anyway that says AutoSum. So if you selected, let's say in this instance, F3 here on this bit of data, and you clicked AutoSum, Excel is automatically saying, are these the things that you want me to add up? Which is pretty helpful, because usually it's right, not always. And if you just hit enter, then that will automatically in F3 add up quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the UK. Now you can do that in the next box as well and click AutoSum, or you can use our autofill function and drag down to the USA. And what that will do is it will autofill the AutoSum. So you can automatically get the values of that. If you wanted to do it, if we wanted to total our quarters up as well, we could do that using AutoSum. So again, selecting B9 in this instance here, hitting the AutoSum button, Excel says, is this the data you want? Yes, it is. Hit enter, and then that auto sums Q1's numbers as well. Again, you can auto fill that across to Q4, and we've got our totals there. So let's try that in F9. If we click on F9 and use our auto sum button, Excel saying, is this the data that you want? And let's say it's not. Actually, let's say we wanted to add up our quarters 1 to 4 instead. And we can easily correct that. When you see a box with a sort of a flashing edge around it, it's normally saying, is this what you want? And it's giving you an opportunity to change it. And simply with your cursor, if you just drag from B9 to E9, you can just correct it and say, no, I don't want that. Excel, this is what I want. So you can change it, hit enter, and rather than adding up what it thought it was going to add up, you've slightly changed it to add that up instead. Now that's a bit confusing as a spreadsheet as it is, because that total wasn't clear, but actually what it's done is it's changed in accordance to your preferences and what you wanted to do. Has everyone got that? Yeah, okay.
I haven't done it on my map because I wanted to watch what you're actually doing, but
Okay, we'll go have a go, Sue. And again, don't forget, we use our autofill function, but behind, if you just select these, behind each of those, you'll actually see what that equation, what that formula looks like in our formula bar. So if you're interested to see where the numbers are being picked up from, you can click on the cells. And in this formula is basically saying, this is a sum of everything in between B7, which is here, and E7. That's what those colons mean in an Excel formula. It means 2, up to and including. Previously, traditionally, maybe if you wanted to sum something, you had to put equals B7 plus C7 plus D. You don't have to do that. You just use the colon if they're all in a row or in the same line. It will just pick up everything in between. All right, I'll tell you what, let's break for 10 minutes, give you a chance to either have a little practice, or more likely, probably go and have a cup of tea. Righto, so if you open up your spreadsheet called Calculation Practice, which I'll show you on the screen, is, hold on, you'll see that first of all. Okay, have you all got that? Okay, great, good stuff, thumbs up, lovely. Right, okay, so this next part, I just want to talk to you a little bit about formulas for when we don't have an auto sum, or auto sum might not actually be appropriate for us. So let's, I personally find it easier to use the num keypad, which is, I don't know if you have it on yours, if you've got a laptop, but it's this part of your keyboard, just because it's much easier to sort of navigate the numbers rather than at the top. So that's what I use. So let's have a look at our practice here. Let's select cell D5. Now, if we wanted to add quarters 1 and 2, we know full well that we could go into our formulas, hit auto sum, and it would pick that up for us. But let's get into the practice or the habit of using the formula bar up here in order to do some calculations, because on the next, we've got, you see along the bottom here, we've got different spreadsheets. We're going to actually use some different functions, not just adding. We're going to do some subtracting, some multiplying. So let's break ourselves in gently then with some addition. So do you know how you start a formula in Excel? We always must begin with. Yes, Joe.
Equals, Matt.
Very good, well done. Yes, so exactly. So whenever you're about to type in a formula to Excel, you need to start with equals. Then Excel goes, right, okay, you're doing a formula. So yes, absolutely. So if we wanted to add our Q1 and Q2 travel from London, we could just put in equals, and you could simply click on the cell, and you wouldn't have to necessarily get the cell reference and type it in yourself. It would populate for you, and use the plus, and then you can either click on the other cell or you can type in, I know that it's cell C5, I'm just going to type in C5, and you can see actually the Excel goes, oh, is this the one you want? And it is. Then you hit enter, and you'll see that it populates with the answer. So if you could just add those up. Now you can do what you like. You can, for the next one, for Maidstone, you could use AutoSum. You'll see that it will want to add up the ones above. Say, no, Excel, I want you to do these two instead, and hit enter. You can do it that way. And you can also use your autofill function as well. A little shortcut with your autofill function is that if you select the autofill arrow at the bottom right, or the autofill cross, the black cross, and if you double click it, Excel will say, well, I think these are the columns that you want to autofill in this instance. If you hit double click, you'll see that actually Excel's autofilled the range of the data. So it understands that this data is in a range. It picks up that this is a blank cell or cells underneath it, and it guesses that actually you want to autofill all the way down to there, which in this instance is correct. So a little shortcut for you. It doesn't always work. If you've got a data with gaps in, for example, it would only work down to that gap. So it might not be appropriate on a spreadsheet with lots of gaps in, for example, like that. But if you had a big set range of data with no gaps in, your autofill double click is quite a handy little shortcut to remember. Okay, so these spreadsheets here are all behind the scenes, tell you whether you've done things right or wrong, which is good because we're not going to do all of them. If you wanted to go away and practice, you could do on your own, which I'm sure you all will. Okay, so we've added our formulas in there for addition. Let's move on. Let's move on to profit sheet, which is the next one along. If you click along the tabs at the bottom, you'll see profit. So that's why we did addition rather than AutoSum, is because now I want you to minus. So I want you to calculate net sales minus the cost of sales. So how would we go about doing that? Would anyone like to have a stab at the formula for London? What were you going to type? Talk us out loud.
It'll be equals. I know
Yes,
that bit.
good. Ding.
I've learned
Excellent.
something.
Well done. Yeah. Next bit.
And then probably B5.
Yes, excellent.
And then a minus sign, which I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's just the dash on your num keyboard. It's top right.
And then C5.
Absolutely. Very good. And then hit enter.
But I won't retain it, Matt. I remember. I can do it, but I won't retain it.
Well, look, you've got these materials now. And if ever you need to dip back in and just remind yourself, then you can, or you can just ask me. Or Google
Or
it.
I can just do AutoSum.
Or you can do AutoSum for addition. You can see that AutoSum with the drop down here will give you an average. It will count a max and a min. It doesn't automatically default to minus.
No.
I don't think it's in the list either. So I think it's a lot easier just to do the equation. Sorry, the formula. Yes. So if you can go all the way down with that, you can either type it in manually, or you can autofill, double click. It should autofill down for you, and you'll see again behind the scenes here in our formula bar, Excel automatically changes the cell to the next one down. So it says you've added these two together. You probably want to add the next two down together, which we do. If you didn't want that, by the way, you just add in a $sign, but I think we're moving into probably intermediate. So I won't do, but that's absolute referencing. If you have a specific cell that you don't want to keep changing as you go down, put a $sign in front of the reference. Anyway, go on the intermediate course if you want to do that. All right, so that's our profit sheet with AutoSum minus. Let's go on to commission one. So here we want to calculate our commission on the amount of what we've got here. So anyone fancy a stab at the equation for calculating our row 4 there, Cape Town from Heathrow, bed and breakfast, £950. How are we going to work out our commission in a formula?
Equals
Yep.
D4
Yep.
times, I don't know, would it let you do a times 0.1?
Yep. Yes, exactly. Yeah, almost exactly right. The times function in Excel is the star, which if
Yeah.
you've got a numpad, it's handily, it's there. So it is times, and you can there's a couple of things you can do. So you can either do, if you want 10%, that's 0.1 in sort of decimals, isn't it? So you can do times 0.1, and that should work. Or you could actually type in 10%.
And that works.
And that works too. Yeah, so you don't need to even know, your decimals and your math. If just, again, you didn't used to in previous versions, but much more intuitive now. So yes, well done, absolutely excellent. So again, we could autofill that down in any way we wanted. I'll drag it down this time. We could do them individually. I don't know why you ever would in this instance, but you could, and you'll see that that's right all the way down. Marvelous. All right, then let's just do this last one, because this throws up a bit of a spanner in the works. So let's have a look. So if we wanted to get the commission here, so we want the calculate the amount minus our costs multiplied by 10% to get our commission. So what do we think our formula could be here then?
Equals
Yep. Very good.
D4,
Yes.
whatever the multiplication. No, we've got
Yeah.
to minus
So
it first, haven't we? We've got a minus 380.
minus.
So
Yeah,
we've got a minus E4,
Yep.
and then we've got to multiply by 10%. Well, no, we'll need an equal sign of what the total is, and
I
then
think we
multiply
might
by
want
10.
brackets. It's BODMAS, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Yes. So you're right. You're absolutely right, because we will need to do that calculation
Yeah,
first.
so we'll need to do
And
the calculation before we can do the 10% of it.
and that's right. And then what Joe said next is also right. It is brackets, and it's something called BODMAS, which I understand if you have children at primary school or have been through that recently, you might know what that is. I'm not there yet, so I don't. So so if you had this, let's say 5 plus 2 times 3, what's the answer to that? What's the answer to that equation?
What, 5 plus 2
11.
Yeah, times 3.
times 3, 21?
Yes.
11.
So yes, no, it is. You would say it's oh no, what's happened here? What have I clicked on? Sorry. You would say it, wouldn't you? It's 21. But actually, what Excel will give you is 11. For this reason that I wish I could share something else with you here. I've got so yeah, 5 equals 5 plus 2 times 3. Can I do it up in the formula bar? Sorry, I'm just going to see if I can do it up here. I think it's trying to tell me that it's trying to automatically correct it for me. I don't think it will let me get this wrong. No, okay, it will. So actually what Excel though has given you, see I've gone for 5 plus 2 times 3, and it's given me 11. And that is because of exactly what Joe said, BODMAS, which means that there are levels of hierarchy in terms of calculation, and is BODMAS is what it stands for. So it's brackets, power of, divide, multiply, add and subtract. So what that's saying is that Excel will therefore look at this and try and order it in the BODMAS format. So it will say that, well, brackets is first. Are there any brackets? No. Is there any power of calculations in there? No. Is there any divide? No. Is there any multiply, yes, I'm going to do that first. So Excel is actually saying I'm doing 2 times 3, which is 6. And then it goes down. What's next? I add. Yes, there's an add. Then I'm going to add the 5 and give it 11. But the way around that is because B for BODMAS, brackets are always first, is to put some brackets around the equation that we would automatically as humans do first, but Excel will not because of this. Put brackets around it and it will tell it, I want you to do this first and that next. So you were right and exactly right in what you said, Sue, that you needed it to do that calculation first and then do the next bit. But that's how we do it in Excel. So points for everybody. I think everyone's on board with this. So we will need to take that into consideration here, because what we're doing is we're doing equals our amount minus our costs, and we're multiplying by 10%, and it's telling us that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Because it's doing E4 times 10% first. So to counter that, where do we put our brackets?
Around D4 minus E4.
Exactly. So we're saying to Excel, you need to do this first. I know you don't want to, because I know that you value multiply higher than subtract, but that's what you need to do first. And that fixes our formula for us then in this instance. So that's often why you'll see brackets in Excel formulas, again, traditionally. Other reasons as well. It's just about telling Excel what you need it to do in which order. And you need to do it when you think about even some simple calculations like this. The very simple ones that we've just done previously, not, but ones where you've got addition and subtraction and multiply and divide together, you might need to consider it. All right. Okay, so there's, and you can also fill that and it will make it all correct on your spreadsheets too. All right, okay, I think at this point, I just want to show you a couple of other bits. I might just delete that bit off of my spreadsheet first. So what I want you to do, I just want to show you some bits that I personally find really, really helpful before we move on to charts. Are you au fait with putting data in tables and how useful that is and how you can do it and why you would do that? A little bit, yes. Okay, I think it's something that's really, really useful. So I'm going to show you what to do. So if you can, you've probably seen tables in Excel before where there's a menu or these headings at the top and drop down menus next to it. And those are really simple, especially now with later versions of Excel, to create. And we're going to create one on this spreadsheet. So if you can just highlight your data between A3 and F23. And simply just press on the menu at the top, insert, and click on table. And it will ask you, it says, is this what you want your data to be? And it should be if you've highlighted it. And it with the tick box, my table has headers, well, exactly, it means exactly that. Does your table have headers included in this data that you've highlighted? For us, it does, because destination UK airport type, blah, blah, blah. There are headers and we've got those. And if you click OK, magically, you will see that Excel has put this data in a table. And I would always recommend that if you're manipulating data or sorting it, to have it in a table. It just makes things so much easier. Really simple step, but actually has made analysis of this data so much easier. Now, what you'll be able to see.
Sorry, Matt, I was watching and now
Okay.
I'm trying to do it myself and I can't get it to say create table.
Okay, so highlight A3 to F23. On the menu bar at the top, click insert. And then third from the left in table should be just table. Click on that.
No. Sorry, I'm going to watch it. So do that again.
Okay, I'll do it again. Okay, I'll undo my table. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight my data. Here. I was on home, but I've clicked on insert. This is my tables group. Third one from the left is table. Simply click on that. It will bring up what they call a dialog box saying, is this the data you want? make sure you tick my table has headers, click OK, and then you have them. So that's it. Really powerful to in order to analyze data. So some really simple things that I use tables for all the time. So if you go to our column A, destination, you'll see if you click on the drop-down menu, it gives you lots of different options. Sorting data A to Z is one I use all the time, or from value-wise, as I'll show you in a minute. So then we might want to put it A to Z. And the beauty of a table is that it sorts every other row in that table. So you won't lose your data. If you've sorted Athens, Bangkok, all the data in the table next to it will come with it. So you haven't just sorted column A and then all the other data makes no sense now because you've messed it up. It's brought everything with it. So that's the beauty of having your data in a table. So that's put our destinations in A to Z, which is helpful. We could look at our amount, our drop-down menu on amount, and we could do the same, sort largest to smallest. So let's see where most of our money comes from. And all of a sudden then that's sorted by value. So really, really helpful there. Other things that we can do, if you click on UK airport, if you just wanted to look at your travel from Gatwick, you could do that by clicking on the arrow next to UK airport. I tend to just click the select all button that's already ticked, because that then deselects everything. And then you can choose which you want to look at. So I want to look at Gatwick, click OK, and I've just got the data then for Gatwick. Really helpful. If I want to look at Gatwick and Heathrow, then I'll just go in and tag Heathrow as well. And all of a sudden I've got the Gatwick and Heathrow. All right, it's a bit messed up. I'll go back in and I'll sort A to Z so they're in Gatwick and Heathrow order. Makes my table nice and tidy. Common issue with tables is people go into data and they're faced with something a little bit like this. I had a massive load of data. Oh no, I've only got 3 bits left. What's happened here? The clue to that is that if you look at the rows on the left, you'll see that they're messed up. 1, 3, 6, 11, 21. That tells me, hold on, there's some hidden data here. And also within your data, if it's filtered in any way, on the arrow next to each of the headings will be here. That's a filter sign. And that means this data is filtered. You might want to click on me if you want all your data back. And you can click on it and then you'd select all. And you'd see actually that all your data is back. When it's just the arrow, that just means it's sorted in some way. So we did sort it A to Z when we had Gatwick and Heathrow. That didn't bring that through when we got Luton and Manchester back, but now I've resorted it as well. So tables really, really helpful to sort data, analyze data, and work from high to low, and just take bits of data. So you can imagine on a massive spreadsheet, if you just wanted to look at Gatwick or Heathrow or whatever it is that you look at, that's really powerful and really helpful to draw that data out. Okay, so that's one thing. I wanted also to show you freeze panes, which is really helpful on a massive spreadsheet, and to show you the power of that, I'm probably going to zoom in a bit more actually. So if I'm looking at my spreadsheet here and I want to look further down my spreadsheet and I'm looking at line 22 here, Boston, Manchester, Romania. What do those headings mean again? Oh, I have to go back up to the top. Was it destination UK? Okay, go back. So it's destination UK airport. Okay, so we're not quite sure. So freeze panes is really, really helpful to help you navigate around your spreadsheet. So that's under the view button on the menu here, and you can see it along the window group, and it's called freeze panes there. What freeze panes does is saying says you can choose a point of where it doesn't matter how far down or across this spreadsheet you scroll, you can still see these particular cells. So there's some really simple ones here. You can freeze the top row, freeze the first column. Not very helpful for us to freeze the top row in this spreadsheet because we've got a heading, but we might want to freeze our first column. And then when we go across, you can see that our destination sticks with us all the way across, so we can sort out what our commission looks like on our destination. And that's nice and easy, great. Okay, but what if I scroll down? No good to me. If I freeze the top row, I've just got our heading, which makes no sense at all. So you might want to freeze at different points. So I'm just going to click unfreeze panes to undo all that. A different point on this spreadsheet. What would be helpful for me is if we freezed around cell B4, because I would like this frozen and everything above it frozen. I might actually get rid of the title if this was actually working on this, because that would annoy me. But anyway, if I go to freeze panes and click on freeze panes, it says keep rows and columns visible while the rest of the worksheet scrolls based on your current selection. I've currently selected B4, click on that, and now if I go down, it will keep where I've frozen above, and if I go across, you'll see that it's kept destination as well. It's a really helpful way for us to navigate spreadsheets with lots of data on and remember what our headings are, or a particular column or row. So that's, I think, a really helpful one for us to remember. If you ever get in any trouble with that, just go back to freeze panes and click unfreeze panes, and it will take everything off and you're back to normal again. You might even go into spreadsheet and somebody's frozen panes and you think, what the hell's going on here? Just go and unfreeze them. Easy way to get over that. And the last thing that I just wanted to talk to you on this spreadsheet before we go to tables. Yes.
Sorry.
Right.
So if you're sent a spreadsheet and the panes are already frozen, would you know if you didn't check?
Only by the fact that the headings would be following you down.
Right. It's just I was sent a spreadsheet a couple of weeks ago to work on, and somehow I missed the first 30 cases.
Right.
And I don't know how I did it. Only when I went back and I'd started halfway down the sheet and started to contact from midway down. And I just don't know how I did it. And I wondered whether something like that, it was frozen. So I hadn't seen the top half.
Quite possibly. So if somebody had accidentally froze it down here somewhere, then you can see that actually I've frozen 18 to the top and I can't see the top anymore because I've frozen it.
Perhaps I did it by mistake.
I can never get so but if you go into view freeze panes and click on the drop down, if it says unfreeze panes, that means there are some frozen panes in there.
Right. Okay.
Click on that and that will release your spreadsheet back to normal.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay. And the other really
also,
useful.
Matt, could somebody have hidden the rows? Because I think we've had some GDPR issues in the past, haven't we, where people have just hidden rows, but actually the data is still there.
Yeah, that could be true as well. So you can, and because sometimes you want to run some calculations, like our flexi sheets are a prime example. There was a lot of hidden rows in our or columns actually in our flexi sheet because there's a lot of calculations that go on behind it. Now you and I don't need to see that. We just need to see where we need to put our hours in. So those are hidden, which is why that flexi sheets can corrupt sometimes if you start trying to do things outside of only the boxes that you're meant to type in. So you can, if you highlight columns and right click, you can hide columns. So if I didn't want someone to see the destination or the I can't remember what I've just hidden, to be honest. Let's unhide them. Those two columns, I could actually, what the type was and what the amount was, then I could hide them. So it could be, Joe's right, that you maybe have some hidden columns or even rows as well. You can do the same with rows. You can highlight a bunch of rows, right click, hide, and it will actually hide those from me. A good clue, again, is the numbering. If you see the numbering is out, then you know that something's up. Could be an issue with your table. If you have a table, could be that you've got some hidden rows or columns. And the way to overcome that is just highlight those, on this instance, rows either side, right click, and it should say unhide if there's something hidden, and they will pop back. So if you're not in sequence in your lettering or your numbering, it could be that, there are some hidden cells, rows, columns somewhere. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to do is just with that point that I made about having spreadsheets all in one workbook is a useful way of doing things. I haven't often, but I've known instances of people who couldn't move workbooks, spreadsheets between workbooks, so have actually had to copy the whole thing, select it, copy, paste into a new sheet. You don't need to do that. So really simply at the bottom here on your tabs that we've got here, if you right click on any one of those, I'm in Commission 2, I'll do that now. All you need to do is move or copy, select that. Now you may know that you could move it in the workbook itself or create a copy. So I could decide to move Commission 2 to the end of this workbook, and that would put it at the end here. But also, I think more powerful, more useful to know is know that you can move it to a whole new file. And here I've still got income and expenditure open. So if I wanted to move that to another spreadsheet or workbook, then I could move that to that income and expenditure one we had open earlier. It will pick up the tabs that I've got. Perhaps I want to stick it at the end. Press OK. And can you probably can't see this. If I stop sharing for just a sec, you will see reshare. But actually, this is my income and expenditure spreadsheet that we worked on at the beginning, and actually Commission 2 has popped up there. I've seen a number of times where people have tried to get the data, Control-C, move to the workbook, paste it, all the formatting's gone, doesn't look right, nightmare. You don't need to do that. It's a simple case of right-clicking on the bottom here, move or copy, and opening a spreadsheet or a new spreadsheet, a new workbook that you've got. So good tip, I think, off that one. Joe, yes.
How do you know if it's going to move or copy? What if you want it? You don't want it to do either or.
So you do select. If you don't select create a copy, it will move it. Can you see that dialog box?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It will. So I would well, not always. If you're not sure, create a copy. Because then at least you have it in two places, and then you can go and delete it from somewhere else. So yes, if it will move it unless you specify that you want it to be a copy. But if you put it there and you don't want it there, you can right click it and you can still delete that sheet. But if you haven't made a copy, don't forget, as this warning gives you, this is permanently deleted, can't undo it. So if you're deleting sheets, be careful, make sure that you've got the data that you need somewhere, because you see undo, it doesn't exist for that particular function. Right. Okay, let's move on then finally to charts, because I can't not do charts, can I? With two of you talking about charts. So let's I'll stop sharing that. And if you could open the data called chart, funnily enough. Number 8 chart, it's called. And I'll just show you I'll just share my screen again with you. How to create really simple charts in Excel for our last 20 minutes or so. Okay, so charts have become one of those, probably, I would say, the thing that I think has become much, much more easy than previous versions of Excel. So if you've been burnt before by charts, don't let that stop you now, because honestly, things are so much easier. I would also say that if you really want to create powerful charts, then get your head around pivot tables. Go to the intermediate course. I think you said, Jamie, that they might be touching on that, because I use pivot tables and pivot charts all the time, and they're brilliant. If you want something quite simple, I would say this data is quite simple. There's clearly 2 axes, not a lot of data. You can very easily just do that without messing around with pivot tables, if that's a word or 2 words that scare the life out of you. So very simply, actually, it's just a case of highlighting your data and hitting insert, and now there's this whole group called charts that actually will give you even a recommended chart for that particular data. But we'll work through it together, and I'll show you how that works. I mean, this easiest way to create a chart is just by highlighting the data that you've got, and if you actually hit F11, it just automatically creates one for you, which is like magic. As long as the data you've got is sensible, the headings you have are sensible, it will pick up what it thinks. It might not get it right, so you might need to play about with it. The other really great thing now about more recent versions of Excel is that as soon as you do create a chart, it will give you some extra options up the top here on your menu bar. So chart design, then you can start playing around actually with your different chart design. It will give you lots of different options. You can change the colors, you can change the different elements, you can add a title, you can add axis titles to it. So there are so many more intuitive options there on these options here than there were previously. previous versions of Excel really difficult to edit charts, but with these additional options up here, chart design and format, much more intuitive, much easier, and I'd recommend that you just played around with it a little bit. But let's close that anyway. Chart 1, or I will move it over here somewhere. We'll go back to sales year 1. If you wanted to do it manually, you can absolutely still do it manually, because that might not be the chart you want. But we do it in a very similar way. You'd highlight it, you just click insert, and as I mentioned before, you've got these charts groups here. Unless there's something specific that I want, I usually click on recommended charts and see what they come up with. And the really great thing about that is it will actually give you a visual illustration of your data and what it's going to look like. So actually I can click through this and think, well, is that what I want? Is that what I want? Is that near what I want? Because if it's near what you want, because of the additional tools that there are, then there's a lot of editing that you can do once you've selected the one that you want. If you cancel that, you don't have to do recommended charts. We could try and put this in a pie chart. Wouldn't work very well because I don't think the data lends itself to that. You can still go against the recommended charts and choose really anything that you wanted to up the top here. But should we let's create a chart, and then I can show you some of the ways in which you can edit a few bits and pieces. So let's highlight our data, hit insert and recommended charts. I think the clustered column is pretty good, actually. So the one that it suggested anyway, the one that we pressed F11, it just raised for us. The thing with F11 is that will create a new chart in a separate sheet, which is what it's done with chart 1 here. If you create it in this way, it will also create the chart on the worksheet with the data in it. So slight differences there. Good thing about charts is that they pick up, creating them in this way, they will pick up the data. So if the data changes for any reason, the chart should also change with that data. So you can see the massive number here, all of a sudden, it's changed the chart accordingly. So that's really helpful. It still links to it. If you want to move this chart to a PowerPoint presentation, for example, there are options where you can just paste it as a picture so that if somebody messes around with the data, it's not linked to your PowerPoint presentation, which then, if you want to give a snapshot in time, for example, and you've got some live data in the background, and then you go to give that presentation and that live data has changed, then you might not want it to carry that data through. So when you copy and paste charts, then you will have that option to do that. In terms of changing the axes, is again really intuitive. Change the chart title by highlighting it, clicking at it. Let's go rainfall totals in this instance. We can do. You can even, if we go, you can change things like the axes as well for charts. Up here, so you can change where they are. So you can change, at the minute we've got the primary horizontal, it's called there, or we can change it to the vertical, which would mean that actually we're not too worried about the numbers and we just much more prefer a graphical display of it. We've got axis titles we can add by just using this add chart element function here. So if you actually wanted to specifically say what this was in the vertical axis here, cost by products, let's say, we can really easily just add that. So that's all up here in our top left with our chart design, add chart elements. We can actually add chart labels as well. So if we wanted to, if the axes numbers weren't actually that clear, we could actually add the precise numbers, and we could do that. It gives you lots of different options. If you hover over that, it will show you what those options look like. I mean, I wouldn't particularly recommend it on a bar chart. I don't think you need it here, but you can do that in all sorts of different ways. It gives you lots of different options. Grid lines sometimes useful if you want to get that read across or up or down in a particular way. And again, it will give you lots of different options here. You can have lots of grid lines or not. And then legend as well. So that's the key, I suppose we'd say in this country, product A, B, or C. You can get rid of it. You can put it to the right, but it's not. So much more, if you're used to charts from previous versions, so much more user-friendly and intuitive, and it will actually show you what it is that you're going to be doing to your chart as well.
If you've got, say, column A is something like technical or something that you wouldn't necessarily want to share in terms of
Yeah.
like product A being, you want it to transpose that data into the chart, but you actually want to label it as something different to product A.
Yep.
Will it?
Yep.
Can you just change that name?
Yes. Yeah. You can, but you do it probably in your data. So it would just transfer across here. So if you wanted to call that, I don't know, what would you call it? Just an example.
I don't know, like item 3, for instance.
You'll see that it's automatically now, because it's bringing through the data, change that there. It's a good question though, because you can't always change your the legend or your key. But you can always change your data in the table where it's deriving it from. So you can always change all elements. And also, Jamie, I don't know if this was part of the point you were making, but if you didn't want to show March, for example, because that was particularly sensitive or quite bad, maybe this wasn't rainfall, maybe this was something performance related, we might want to hide that. If you just, again, like we talked about hiding columns, if you hid it from your data, it would hide it from your chart as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Which could be useful. So say you had a team's performance data and you just wanted to show 2 or 3 that maybe a team leader was responsible for, you could manipulate it in that way.
Yeah, so say if I was using column A as like members of my team and their performance.
Yeah. Yes,
I wouldn't
exactly.
want that to pull across onto, like,
yeah,
I don't want that to show on a column if I was going to like demonstrate into the team that their performance had, well, it's always me being negative, let's say really went up in the last couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would want to anonymize those columns.
Sure.
This is
yeah. So you could say
I'd have to anonymize the raw data there, which I wouldn't want to do, because that table I would want for my purposes.
Okay. So what you could do though is, say if you've got your master here with Steve, Dan, and Jan, you could make a copy of it just for the purposes of showing the data. So if you did sales year 1, if we did move or copy, create a copy, let's move it to the end. So we've now got sales year 1. Let's call it team performance. And now actually we've still got sales year 1. That's still fine. That's untouched, that data. Let's go in here and edit it, because we're going to show Dan his performance based on 2 other people who we're not going to name. But we've done it in a really easy way. We're not messing with our data over there. We're just doing it for illustrative purposes. And you might want to delete that after the meeting with him or whatever.
Print a P45 out.
Yeah, exactly. Send it, staple it to his P45, the chart. Yeah.
Couldn't you also use a note to anonymize, like say you got product A, B, C there, and you could stick a note on a product A to say who it was?
What do you mean by a note? Like
if you highlight the, say, cell A2, right click, and then do add note, new note.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you could then put in the person's details there.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, if the data's anonymized, yeah.
And then that way, all they'll see is product A. Or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. On the if they haven't got access to the spreadsheet, then yeah, definitely on the chart. Yeah, that's a good way. That's another way of doing it. Yeah. Good call.
The other thing I've had happen. Sorry, do you mind if I ask one more question?
No, fine. To be honest, I'm not going to show you much more about charts or anything in particular. So I think this is a good opportunity just to have a chat.
You just, I think, accidentally touched on it earlier, where I've had data that I'm trying to represent, but like having a meaningful like Y column has been ruined by like one outlying piece of information. So say if you made, I don't know, February product like
Yeah.
pan like 1,000 or something silly, then it is there any way of, I would prefer that outlier was just, this chart is really demonstrating to me this one outlier is the valuable bit of information on there, but it's not
Mm.
really. I
Mm.
suppose it's a case maybe just hiding that.
It is. I think then you might want to think about your chart design. Is a bar chart the best way of showing that? Is there another? I'd go back to my recommended charts in this instance. Let's go back to our data. Let's get rid of that. And let's have a look what other charts there might be. Oh, I was going to change this. Sorry, change it to 900. I would go and have a look. I would go insert. Sorry, tell me if I'm going too fast. And just to see if there was a slightly better way, obviously doing that. That doesn't look great either, does it? Maybe a bit better. Your stacked column, which gives you the data, but still maybe not ideal. Maybe that's a little bit better. I wouldn't probably recommend those. I think it's hard, isn't it? If you've got an outlier, you've got an outlier. You can either remove it or you try and manage it in the presentation of the data a bit differently. But I know what you mean. I've definitely had instances like that as well. I think I would be tempted to maybe change it to something a bit more representative like that.
Yeah, because I'd be much more concerned about like having more detail on that y-axis from like 0 to 200. So show the small discrepancies. Well, in comparatively small discrepancies between people, which are sort of lost in the aggregate by that one outlier.
Yeah.
It is a lot easier now that you've shown that, actually, to create something like visually powerful than it used to be anyway. I
Massively.
think.
Yeah, don't let previous experiences stop you having a go these days, because I think it's the part of Excel that they've improved the most for everybody to make it much more user friendly. Because it used to be really hard, didn't it, to get into and just to sort out a chart in Excel. Are there any other questions or areas that you'd just like me to either cover or go over again, or anything in particular you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
I think I've shown you all what I would call beginner level tips and tricks. If you have found that useful and you're fairly comfortable doing that, I would recommend doing the intermediate one, because I think the more functions that you're comfortable with in Excel, it becomes so powerful. And for me, VLOOKUPs for me, Jamie, are not particularly useful because I don't have lots of data that I need to find instances of stuff in. But pivot tables, if you analyze lots of data, I think are really, really useful. Like I did the staff survey stuff using pivot tables. It takes me probably a week anyway, but it would take me a month without them probably.
Yeah.
So I would recommend getting under the skin of that.
Cool. I think it's next week, isn't it?
Yes, I think you're right.
I think with me, Matt, although you're teaching us how to do things, I